Only one actor has played James T. Kirk's mother in Star Trek since the franchise began almost 6 decades ago. For nearly 60 years, Star Trek has boldly gone through countless characters, timelines, realities, and reboots. Yet, even as the franchise has reinvented itself again and again, one surprising detail has remained strikingly consistent. Only one actor has ever portrayed the mother of the most iconic captain in science fiction, James Tiberius Kirk. It's an astonishing footnote in Trek history, especially considering how many versions of Kirk have existed across TV, film, animation, and alternate timelines. Through all of it, Winona Kirk has been almost completely absent from the franchise, with one single actress carrying the distinction of defining her. That actress is Jennifer Morrison, who played Winona Kirk in 2009's Star Trek, the first film in the Kelvin timeline trilogy directed by J.J. Abrams. And for a character connected to one of the most famous names in pop culture, her presence has been surprisingly limited, yet deeply memorable. The fact that Morrison remains the only performer to ever step into the role says a lot about how Star Trek has handled its foundational characters over the decades. It also reveals why Kirk's mother, much like the captain himself, is a character shaped as much by absence as presence. A character nearly invisible across 60 years of Trek. To understand why Morrison's singular casting is so remarkable, it helps to recognize just how rarely Winona Kirk appears at all. The original series, despite being centered on Kirk as a heroic figure, offered almost no information about his family. His brother Sam appeared in a single episode, Operation Annihilate, but Kirk's parents were mostly left vague or unnamed. The Star Trek novels and comics filled in those gaps over time, but none of that material was canon. Even as the franchise expanded to the animated series, The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, and beyond, Kirk's mother remained a blank space. Classic Trek rarely explored characters' family lives unless a story explicitly demanded it. Kirk, in particular, was written as a man defined more by his command chair than his lineage. The lack of family backstory helped keep him mythic, but it also meant that when J.J. Abrams rebooted the franchise, he was stepping into narrative territory that had barely been touched. And that's how, in 2009, Jennifer Morrison became the first, and still only, actor to give Winona Kirk an on-screen presence. Jennifer Morrison's Winona Kirk. A small role with massive emotional weight, Morrison's appearance in Star Trek is brief, but it is pivotal to the emotional foundation of the Kelvin timeline. In the film's opening sequence, Morrison portrays Winona Kirk aboard the USS Kelvin, moments away from giving birth while the ship is under attack by Nero's time-traveling Romulans. The scene is chaotic, tragic, and heroic all at once. George Kirk sacrifices himself to save the crew, including his newborn son, while Winona escapes, just in time. Morrison's performance captures everything the moment needs: fear, shock, resilience, and heartbreak layered into a few unforgettable minutes. Her portrayal carries weight well beyond her screen time. Winona becomes the emotional anchor that explains this version of Kirk's troubled youth, his rebellious nature, and his strained relationship with authority. Chris Pine's Kirk grows up without a father, but with the legacy of a man who died a hero, and Morrison's Winona represents the pain and strength behind that legacy. It's impressive that such a monumental origin moment hinged on a character the franchise had never bothered to depict before. But Morrison made her presence matter immediately, shaping the tone and emotional texture of an entire new branch of Star Trek continuity. Why has no one else played Winona Kirk? The biggest reason Winona Kirk has remained a one-actor role is simple. The franchise has almost never needed her. Kirk's story has been told across decades, but his mother rarely factors into the narrative. One, the original series treated Kirk as self-contained. Captain Kirk's identity in the 1960s wasn't built from family ties. It was built from his ship, his crew, and his heroic persona. Gene Roddenberry envisioned Kirk as a forward-looking character, someone focused on the mission rather than his past. Introducing a mother would have anchored him too much in personal history, something TOS seldom prioritized. Two, the films focused on legacy, not origins. Even the classic film series didn't spend time exploring Kirk's childhood or parents. His arc revolved around aging, friendships, and the burdens of command. A mother simply wasn't a storytelling necessity. 3, alternate reality. Single actor. When Abrams rebooted Star Trek, he introduced Winona because the origin story demanded it. But since that timeline is separate from the Prime universe, any depiction of Winona outside the Kelvin films would require shifting to Pine's version of Kirk or retroactively inserting new material into the original canon, which the franchise has never attempted. For Strange New Worlds hasn't reached that part of Kirk's story, with Paul Wesley now portraying a young James T. Kirk in Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Fans might wonder whether Winona could finally reappear. S&W has already introduced Sam Kirk and offered glimpses into the Kirk family, but the show has been cautious about delving too deep into James Kirk's pre-Enterprise life. His mother simply hasn't been necessary to the narrative yet. Given that S&W leans heavily into character exploration, it's not impossible that Winona might one day appear. But until that happens, Morrison remains the sole portrayal. Winona's absence is part of Kirk's character. There's something almost poetic about Winona Kirk's decades-long absence from Star Trek. Kirk himself is a character defined by the smell of the bridge, the hum of the warp core, the adrenaline of being in command. He represents the idea that people can build families out among the stars, families chosen, not inherited. In the Prime timeline, Kirk is a man shaped far more by Starfleet than by the people who raised him. In the Kelvin timeline, Morrison's Winona provides the emotional impetus for that path, but then recedes into the background. Her silence mirrors how Kirk himself rarely looks back, only forward. In a meta sense, the fact that only one actor has ever played Winona reinforces how little Star Trek leans on traditional family dynamics when defining its heroes. It prefers mentors, friendships, and found family relationships. Will another actor eventually take on the role? The momentum of new Star Trek projects makes the possibility increasingly likely. Strange New Worlds could introduce Winona in a flashback or family-centered episode. Future Kelvin timeline films, should they ever materialize, could revisit the Kirk family. An animated appearance in Lower Decks or Prodigy could bring her into canon again, with a new voice actor. A future series centered on Academy life could reference Kirk's upbringing. But for now, Jennifer Morrison stands alone. In a franchise where dozens of actors have played Klingons, Vulcans, starship captains, and even multiple versions of the same character, it's remarkable that Winona Kirk remains untouched by recasting. Her status is a rare constant in a universe defined by reinvention, a surprising legacy for a character who barely appears. Jennifer Morrison's performance left an outsized impact on Star Trek fandom. Her Winona is often cited when discussing the emotional effectiveness of Star Trek 2009, a film that rekindled mainstream excitement for the franchise. Even though she appears only briefly, she grounds the story in real, human stakes. And that, perhaps, is the most important takeaway. Winona Kirk may not be a major Star Trek character, but she holds a unique position. Only mother of James T. Kirk ever committed to screen across 6 decades. Her role is small,